Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're wrestling with one of the most persistent and honestly most unfair paradoxes in the world of professional service and business.
It really is. We've got a whole stack of sources here that get into the fundamental difference between just working hard and working well strategically.
And it's a core insight that, trips up nearly every high-achieving person at some point.
Absolutely. We're talking about the difference between two kinds of people. On one hand, you have the person who works incredibly hard, learns every skill, they're always on, but they struggle with what our sources call the tired customers.
Ah, the tired customers. The ones who drain your energy, demand endless time, and let's be honest, probably pay you less than you're worth.
That's them. And the paradox is, why is that person struggling? Well, at the same time, you see others who seem, I don't know, very normal, less frantically busy.
And the ideal clients just seem to flow to them steadily. It feels unfair.
It does. But the sources, they really distill the answer down to one single word: positioning.
Positioning.
The successful person has clearly and courageously defined three things: who they are, who they serve, and what specific value they bring. The struggling person is, well, they're trying to be everything to everyone who's willing to pay.
Okay, let's unpack that right away, because positioning can sound so abstract, like marketing speak you'd see on a billboard.
Right.
But the sources here define it as a rule of the game, not just for growth, but for avoiding burnout. This isn't about ads, it's about survival.
Exactly. And you have to confront a basic assumption that a lot of us hold. And this is a direct question for you, the listener, from our sources.
Go on.
If your operating philosophy is, I'm ready to do work for everyone who pays, can you truly become the number one indispensable choice for anyone in particular?
If you're generally available, you're generally replaceable.
You've hit it. You just end up looking similar to everyone else. You haven't claimed any unique territory in the buyer's mind. That mindset, the one that says I have to accept every client to be safe, is actually the path to exhaustion.
But let's push back on that for a second. I mean, if you're just starting out or you have payroll to meet, being that frantic bear running everywhere seems like the only way to survive, right?
It seems like it.
So why do experts who actually refuse clients often grow faster, more sustainably?
Because chasing everyone means you can't build deep expertise anywhere. And that brings us to the first core analogy in our sources, which just illustrates this perfectly. It's the bear on the riverbank.
Okay, the bear on the riverbank.
The hungry bear has two choices. Scenario one is the frantic bear. It runs up and down the river, chasing every little shadow, lunging at every ripple. It's using up massive amounts of energy.
And it ends up exhausted, cold, and probably hungry.
Exactly. Empty-handed, because it was never in the right place at the right time.
And scenario two, the strategic bear.
The strategic bear. It watches the river. It identifies that one spot, the natural bottleneck where the best school of fish is going to flow. It chooses that one position, and it just waits patiently.
Conserving all its energy. So it's not chasing, it's attracting. Or, I guess, intercepting.
That's the entire shift in dynamic. The strategic bear isn't trying to catch all the fish in the river. It's waiting for the ideal fish. And so many of us in business were that running bear, taking every little job, and we end up with nothing substantial to show for it. Positioning is about finding your spot on the riverbank and just standing still.
Okay, so if that right spot is the key, how do we find it in the real world? It's easy to say find the flow of fish, but what does that look like for, say, a consultant or a creative?
Well, that leads us to this really remarkable case study from the sources. It's the story of the 20-year strategist from a top-tier consulting firm.
And this person, they got it right without ever saying things like, I'm the smartest or we have the best service.
Never. For 2 decades, their primary tool was incredibly simple. It was a stack of small index cards.
Index card.
That's it. On the front of each card was the name of a major company. But on the back was a list of the 10 most critical strategic problems that the CEO of that company needed to solve right now.
Wow. So they were basically doing the CEO's homework for them, constantly thinking about their biggest pain points.
Constantly. So when this strategist walked into a meeting with the CEO, they didn't lead with, here's what I sell. They led by presenting the CEO's own problems back to them.
How would that sound?
It would be something like, here are the 10 strategic issues I believe your company cannot afford to ignore over the next year and a half. Let's talk about which one is most urgent.
It changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. You're not a vendor anymore.
You're a peer, an insightful peer. He positioned himself not as a service provider, but as the number one strategic reference source in that CEO's mind, the service contract. That was almost an afterthought.
But I have to ask the skeptical question here. What if he was wrong? What if he listed 10 problems and the CEO said, "You don't understand my business at all"? Isn't that a huge risk?
It's a different kind of risk, sure. The generalist risks being ignored, the specialist risks being wrong sometimes. But think about the upside.
Okay.
Even if 2 of his 10 points were off, the fact that he understood their world well enough to name the other 8, that demonstrated a level of commitment and insight that no one else was bringing. He stood right in the middle of his client's strategic decision-making territory.
And he lived there. That's the key.
That's the key.
Okay, so that shift from selling a product to selling insight is huge. But now we have to talk about the really scary part for a lot of listeners. The idea of saying no. The concept of firing a customer.
This is where logic and fear just collide head-on.
It sounds like financial suicide if you're trying to grow.
It does. But there's this incredible anecdote about a young expert team working for a top 20 corporation. They were thrilled to land this big-name client, of course.
And then the incident happened.
Yes. The team gets a call at 4 p.m. on a Friday. The client needs a complete overhaul of major analyses plus new ideas, a job that should take days.
And they want it by when?
8 a.m. the next morning.
Unbelievable. So the team, being dedicated, they pull an all-nighter. They work until 4 a.m.
They deliver under this completely impossible pressure. And then, here's the insult, 8 a.m. rolls around and the client doesn't show up.
No.
They slept in. They eventually wander in hours later saying they had more urgent things to do. And the source is clear. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern of disrespect.
So the team manager finally did the unthinkable.
They ended the contract. They fired the client. And this is where most people would just see lost revenue, but they saw an opportunity.
What happened inside the client's company?
It was revolutionary. The story spread like wildfire internally. And other departments, the good departments, filled with professionals who were also frustrated by this problem person, they heard the story.
And they saw a team with standards, with a backbone.
Exactly. That act of walking away from disrespect, it just dramatically elevated their perceived value. Those other higher quality departments came back to them.
With bigger contracts.
With significantly larger contracts. They turned losing a bad client into gaining their best client for the next decade.
That is the perfect illustration of opportunity cost. Every hour you put up with the wrong client is an hour you can't invest in finding the right one.
It's a non-negotiable law of business. Every moment you spend on a low-respect, high-demand client is a moment you've stolen from a future high-value relationship. Saying no isn't arrogance. It's creating space for yes.
So let's nail down this definition then. If positioning isn't logos and slogans, what is it? Fundamentally, what's the mechanism?
At its core, positioning is about changing the perception in the buyer's mind. It has almost nothing to do with your external branding and everything to do with their internal mental reflex.
And there's a test for that.
A very simple test.
Like,
When someone in your target market thinks of a specific critical problem like, I need the most reliable family doctor, or I need someone to untangle my messy supply chain.
whose name is the first one that pops into their head is the #1 solution.
That's it. If your name isn't there, you are not positioned. It's that simple.
And this is tied to cognitive load, to how our brains work. We don't trust people who promise too much.
Exactly. The mind is built to conserve energy. It finds safety in simplicity. Psychologically, we can only really hold about 3 core points about any brand or person.
So things like, what are they good at? How are they different? And who are they for?
Precisely. Which is why the statement, I can do everything for everyone, sounds safe, but it's actually incredibly risky. The brain just filters it out as noise.
Because when the stakes are high, you always choose the specialist.
Always. I mean, think about it. If you want amazing BBQ sauce, are you going to buy it from the giant company that makes everything from cheese to mayo?
No, you find the small company that's famous for that one perfect recipe.
The specific is trusted. The general is forgotten when it really matters.
And the sources point out a huge behavioral trap here. The people who struggle with positioning, they tend to chase clients who are easy to meet. The low-hanging fruit.
Because they're afraid of rejection from the higher value clients. But the best professionals, they define their criteria, upfront budget, culture fit, future potential, and they go after that top tier, even if it's harder.
So for the listener who feels like that running bear right now, who wants to hit the reset button, let's give them the actionable steps, the honest assessment they need to make.
Okay, it starts with 3 really core, honest questions. First, what are you deepest, best, and most alive doing?
And that's not just, what are you good at?
No, It's the one thing you'd feel was worthwhile, even if it was the only thing you did. It has to connect to your own energy.
The passion filter. Okay, what's question number 2?
Who do you want to serve and why them? And you have to be radically specific here, not just a demographic, an industry, a type of person, their values. Why do you enjoy working with that kind of person? Don't settle for whoever pays.
And the third one brings it all together.
Yes. If clients only remember 3 words about you, what are those 3 words? It could be deep, straightforward, humane, or maybe fast, accurate, reliable.
And then your entire job is to live and breathe those 3 words.
And ruthlessly eliminate anything that contradicts them.
That's the mental framework. But what about the practical filter for your current and future clients? The sources have that ideal client exercise.
The 4 quadrants. This is so critical for taking emotion out of it. You take a piece of paper, you draw the 4 quadrants.
Quadrant 1 is analysis.
The hard data. Size, budget, industry, long-term financial potential.
Quadrant 2 is practicality.
Yeah.
How easy are they to work with? Their decision-making process, how fast they pay, the actual time they take up.
Right. A client could have a huge budget, which is a high score in Q1, but if they take 6 months to approve anything, their Q2 score is terrible and the opportunity cost is too high.
Then quadrant 3, which is the one a lot of people miss, experiment.
A strategic value. Does this client give you notoriety? Word of mouth. Is the work a genuine learning opportunity that makes you better for the future?
Because if a client pays well, but the work is boring and low leverage, they're actually holding you back.
They're stunting your growth. And finally, quadrant 4, relationship, the happiness factor, mutual respect, culture fit, trust. A client can be perfect on paper, but if they're toxic, they'll burn out your team.
So you use this portrait to rate everyone. You prioritize the high scores, and you identify the ones who are, as the source says, sucking the blood out of your time and energy.
And you don't have to fire them tomorrow, but you start a plan. You raise their prices, you reduce their frequency, you prepare to close that chapter so you can open a better one.
Because if that team hadn't fired the bad client, they'd still be pulling all-nighters for someone who didn't respect them. They never would have landed the better contracts.
And what's the ultimate goal here? It's not just more contracts. The deeper purpose is to stop selling at all. It's to become the trusted advisor for a select group of people.
So that when they have a problem in your domain, their first thought isn't Google.
Their first thought is, I need to ask that person. You become their anchor point, their indispensable reference. The contracts at that point just become the world's way of formalizing that gratitude with money.
It's so clear then. Positioning isn't a game of words. It's a discipline of living, of choosing your center and staying true to it. And the journey doesn't just change your bank account.
It changes your mind. You get less exhaustion from trying to please everyone, and you feel less fear of scarcity because you chose to go deep instead of wide. Scarcity is what creates value.
So for everyone listening, we invite you to take a moment after this. Grab a piece of paper and just write down the 3 words you want to define your own professional positioning for the next 1 to 3 years. That act of self-dialogue, of choosing your center, that is the first most powerful step.